Welcome to Life Beyond B.S, where we ditch the belief systems and the bullshit and get real about life. Here it's about awareness, choice, and creating joy that actually lasts. No perfection, just honest talk and powerful change. I'm your host, Heather McNally, and let's get into it. Content warning. This episode discusses suicide, self-harm, and mental health struggles. If you or someone you know needs support, please reach out to the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Call or text 988 or visit https://988lifeline.org. Hi, and welcome back to Life Beyond B.S. I'm Heather McNally, your host, and today we've got a big topic with an amazing woman who has become a friend. She is a local author near me, and we actually were introduced by a friend before I knew she was writing a book. So it was really exciting when I found out she wrote this book. So let me tell you about Jen. Jen Hoye is a writer and mental health advocate and the author of Thick Thighs, Tattoos, and Breaking Taboos: How I Lost My Brother and Found Myself Again Through Running and Advocacy. She's the founder of Healing Miles, a project honoring lives lost to suicide through running and storytelling. Jen has completed remembrances for hundreds of men, women, and children, and has proudly represented suicide prevention and mental health charities in major races, including the Boston and Chicago marathons. In recognition of her leadership and impact, Jen received the Illumination Award from Girls Inc. for her commitment to empowering women and girls through advocacy, storytelling, and community engagement. A frequent speaker on suicide prevention, grief, and mental health, Jen brings a blend of honesty, humor, and heart to every conversation. She lives in Taunton, Massachusetts with her family, rescue animals, and a flock of hens named Mary Grace. So, Jen, I want to thank you so much for being here today. Welcome to Life Beyond BS.
Thank you so much for having me.
We met through a mutual friend. We both live very local to each other. And it was really interesting to me how we had met and had a great conversation one night at a Christmas open house party. And next thing I know, you've got a book out there. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are at your soul and heart level?
All right. At my soul and my heart level, I am first and foremost a mom. I have three kids, Jimmy, Abby, and Joey. I'm soon to become a grandmother. Jimmy and his partner are having a baby girl in
Woohoo!
January or sooner. We'll see when that happens.
Exciting.
But I've always been a writer from a very young age because I grew up in a family of Sicilian immigrants. And the way that you were heard is you were the loudest person. And I was never the loudest person. And so I started writing to express myself. This book was not the book that I envisioned myself writing, but I felt like it was the book that I needed to write. In 2017, I lost my brother Teddy to suicide, and that really changed the entire trajectory of my life. And I don't say that lightly, but also for several years after he died, I think I stopped living.
Hmm.
So like all of this growth and all of this change has all just been in the last handful of years. And I wish that I had had a book like this when I lost my brother, to
Hmm.
know that all of the things that I was feeling were normal and okay. And so I didn't feel so alone. I think it would have made it easier for me to manage through some of it. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
hoping
can
to
totally.
help even just one person.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. Can you share a little bit with us about who Teddy was as a person, who he was to you, and what that relationship was for you in your life?
Yeah, sure.
And still is.
Still is for sure. So my brother Teddy was a twin. He and his brother Joseph were born in 1975, and they were born 4 months premature. So when micropreemies were not really a thing, Joseph only lived several hours, and Teddy was the bigger of the two, and he weighed half a pound.
Wow.
And he remained at Children's Hospital for almost 2 years. And one of my earliest memories is of going to meet him at Children's with my grandfather. I don't remember seeing him, but I remember the feeling of going up the elevator. And I remember feeling like, I'm your big sister. I'm going to take care of you forever. We were 18 months apart, so we're super close. We also fought nonstop. But when it came to him, like I was his big sister and I was going to protect him from anything and anybody. And even if at home we were beating the crap out of each other, like in the schoolyard, if somebody was mean to him, eventually they knew, like, don't pick on Teddy because his sister is going to kick your ass.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter who it was, if they were older than me, if they were boys, I didn't care. Like, I just did it. And because of our cultural background, girls are supposed to be dainty and boys are supposed to be tough. So we never told any of this to our parents. So it was kind of something that we kept a secret for most of our lives. And I think that that brought us closer in some ways. As a person, from childhood, my brother was a clown. He loved to make people laugh. He loved to do stupid jokes and pranks and like, and they were creative and sometimes bizarre. Like, I can't even, there was a guy at work that, every day for like a week would say to my brother, like, oh, you're having a bologna sandwich? I haven't had a bologna sandwich in a long time. And after a couple of days, my brother made a bologna sandwich, put it in the mail, and sent it to the man in the mail.
What
Never,
a fun
never
package.
never commented on my brother's lunch again. But I remember one April Fool's Day, I was home, I was working from home, and I look over and I noticed that the pictures on my wall, every picture, the face had been replaced with like a photograph, a Xerox copy of my brother's face. And it took me all day to take them down. And every time I thought I had them, I found another one. And my son Jimmy and Teddy just killed themselves laughing. But like that's just who he was. But he also had the biggest heart. He was so kind. He was like the first one to show up at my grandparents' house when it snowed to shovel, or, help the woman who lived across from where he worked move. He didn't even know her. She was just like, would you help me move? And he was like, okay. Where most
Oh,
of us would be like, no, like, I don't know you. I'm not helping you move. I'm not helping my family move, let alone like a stranger. He was just like that kind of a person.
yeah. Sounds like he was very full of life and full of caring.
Yes. And also full of mischief
Yeah.
in a
Which
good way.
which makes
Although,
life interesting and fun. You've got lots of wonderful, beautiful stories and
yeah,
memories.
yeah. And the one thing that we always said, like the people always said, if you knew my brother, you at one point in your life have said the words F and Teddy. And it
Mm-hmm.
could be like a term of endearment, or it could just be like F and Teddy, like for real, like you just like exasperated.
Yeah.
And I think of that a lot because when I'm running these races and I'm like, this is like the biggest joke he's ever played on me
Mm,
is that like I became a runner again after not running for 30 whatever years.
mm.
I'm like, F and Teddy, like this is hysterical. Like, I can't believe I'm doing this, but it's because of him.
Only he could make you do it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's something inside of you that knew that this is right for you. What
Yeah.
got you into running? What made you say, this is what I'm going to do? Was Teddy a runner? Had you
Oh
run
God,
before in
no.
your life?
So in high school, we went to a Catholic high school outside of Boston, and we both ran cross country. Our coach was a nun who was raised in a family of cops from South Boston. So she was as gruff can get. And her name was Sister Nancy. Sometimes my brother would call her Mr. Nancy, but she was a tough cookie. She
Mm.
carried an officer's nightstick around the school. She was the disciplinarian and the cross country coach. And she would run behind us. Like we were the worst team ever. And she would run behind us to make sure people weren't going into the cemetery to smoke cigarettes or get rides. So running wasn't something I did because it made me feel closer to Teddy. Teddy died in 2017. For 3 years, I did nothing but exist. Worked, I did all the stuff, but I don't have many memories. I certainly wasn't enjoying life. I hardly slept. I gained 100 pounds. And then the COVID pandemic hit
Mm.
and everybody was home. I was used to being home alone during the day
Hmm.
for work, and all of the stuff that I did to cope with this loss, like binge eating and self-harm and shopping and all, and just being angry, because that's all I was for years, was angry. They kind of required secrecy.
Hmm.
And now everybody's home and we're crammed into this house and we can't go anywhere. And I don't know what to do. So I said, I'm going for a walk. And like I said, I hadn't slept in years. I'd gained all this weight and I walked, took my dog and we walked to the end of the street, which is like a tenth of a mile.
Hmm.
And I had to take a break and it sucked. It was awful. And while I was walking, I was like, F and Teddy, like, you should be here. This is the one thing you would be prepared for, because he was just always prepared for everything. I went home and I said, I think I'm going to do that tomorrow. And I just kept doing it. And I kept talking to my brother. And eventually I got a little nicer towards him. And eventually I moved off of my street, which I had never walked off of my street ever. And then one day I was walking like, I don't know, 10 miles, right?
Mm.
And I wasn't really noticing. I was sleeping a little bit better. I was feeling better mentally. And then one night I was just scrolling the internet and I saw this thing for American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, a marathon in a month. And I thought, "Mm, I could do that fundraiser in Teddy's memory," because it was around the time of his anniversary.
Hmm.
And but I was like, but I want to really honor my brother. And how can I do this? Because Teddy would have walked a million miles, not just a marathon in a month. So I said, I'll commit to 300 miles, not really comprehending like what that's about 10 miles a day,
Hmm.
working full time, caring for my family, processing the grief. I was just starting therapy, like all the things, didn't really comprehend it. And I thought, well, how can I make this more meaningful? And what would Teddy do? And I said, I'm going to dedicate every day to somebody lost to suicide. And I posted about it in an online group, and within minutes, like my inbox was filled. And I realized I could walk forever and not even make a dent. But what happened over that marathon in a month was I got to know other families and I got to know their person in a way that I wouldn't have otherwise, because I learn about each person. I think about them, I write about them, but also it made me feel closer to my brother. And so every day as I'm doing these walks, whether it was on my lunch break or before work or after work or in a parking lot during somebody's soccer practice, like I felt myself healing. I was trying to do something for others the way that my brother would have done, but I felt myself healing as well. And so after the end of the month, I got an email from AFSP saying, we invite you to apply for our Boston Marathon charity team.
Hmm.
I hadn't run since 1990. So I was like, okay. So I applied and I was accepted. And my family was like, this isn't a good idea.
You're just walking, not
Like
running.
you're going to get hurt. This is like the Boston Marathon. And I thought, but if I'm going to run a race, it's going to be the one. My brother loved the Boston Marathon. He
Hmm.
worked at the State House and he always volunteered to work on Marathon Monday because it was his favorite day. If I'm going to
Hmm.
do it, this is the one I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And my parents were like, I don't know, this is a big commitment. I'm not sure if you can do it. And my youngest, who was about 10 at the time, was like, you're going to win. And I was like, I'm not going to win, but I'm going to finish. And he's like, well, and then you'll give them the middle finger. And I was like, that I can do. That I can do. And I remember being at mile 20 something and thinking, Teddy, like what did I get myself into? I
Mm.
cannot finish this. Like it was in
This is your F
protracted.
and Teddy moment, right?
This is, and I hear my name from the crowd, like my maiden name, Jen Fusco. And I
Mm.
look up and it's a girl I went to high school with. And I was like, Peggy Dyer. I'm like, what are you doing here? And she said, oh, my husband's running. He's about 10 minutes behind you. She goes, what are you doing here? I said, what the F does it look like I'm doing? I'm running the Boston Marathon. And that was like all I needed because in my head, I was like, thank you, Teddy. Like, I am not
Yeah.
letting Filippo Master Cola pass me at the Boston Marathon. And when I
Hmm.
got to the end, I said to my best friend, I saw Peggy Dyer. Her husband's behind us. She's like, did you beat him? Please tell me you beat him. But it was
So
like
funny.
every race, there's like a Teddy moment like that.
Hmm.
It's not always that dramatic, but there's always a moment. And I always save my last mile for my brother, no matter how many others I'm running for.
Hmm.
And I I find myself smiling in that last mile because I feel like we did this together.
He's
Uh,
running with you.
he's with me at the end
Yeah.
for sure.
It's amazing how one little choice at a time can, like you said, you didn't even notice at first, but you started to notice that you were sleeping better, that you were starting to feel better, that you were maybe smiling a little bit more. And it's really the mindset of making choices. So you didn't say, well, I'm getting up today and I'm leaving the house to go out and run a marathon, but you said, I'm going to get up and go for a walk. And it wasn't even a choice necessarily for your health or necessarily for losing weight or getting in shape or anything, but just because you needed it. And
And I was afraid that I was going to murder everyone in my
yeah,
house. I'll be
yeah,
honest. Like
yeah. Well, and the pandemic was definitely one of those times
it
where
was a challenge.
everybody's lives changed. Everybody was challenged in some way, shape, or form. What's beautiful about it is that even though the choice wasn't made specifically for you to get healthier, that's what it led to. And
Mhm.
that's where people start to need to understand choice is a superpower. And one choice that you make can completely change the trajectory of your life. I want to go back for a moment. So, when Teddy did die by suicide and your world changed in an instant, just like everybody's world changed through the pandemic, what was your first emotional or physical reaction that you remember having? And how long did it take before you even knew what your next step was?
Well, I had been out and I came home and my husband said, Teddy's gone. And I, what do you mean he's gone? Gone where?
Mm,
And he said, he died. And I didn't think I heard him correctly. It was just shock, complete shock. And I wanted to go. I live about an hour from my parents. My parents live just outside Boston. And my mother said, wait until the morning. And that was the longest night of my life because I felt like I needed to be with my parents. And Joey was asleep. We hadn't told him. And we had to call Jimmy to come home. It was a lot of just shock at that point.
mm,
And like those next days were just like a thought. I remember very little. I remember moments. And one moment that I remember distinctly was we had a graveside service. There was no wake. And when we left the funeral home, there was a state police escort. And I thought, oh, it's probably because my brother was a park ranger at the state house. What I didn't realize until we got to the cemetery and I got out of the car and I saw that my brother's graveside service had effectively shut down the city of Everett. There were almost 400 people at the
wow.
graveside service. And I was so overwhelmed in that moment. And I thought, look at all of these people who love you. Like, you should be here. That was a hard moment. And I
Mm,
remember thinking, I don't know how to be when I'm not Teddy's sister.
mhm. Yeah. It's part of who you define yourself as.
Mhm.
And identity in that way is very powerful because this is who I am. And now you have lost him and you feel like, but that's who I am. And so it's kind of like having to redefine yourself.
Yeah.
And the grieving process is a very painful one. And everybody has a different amount of time that it takes for them. It affects them differently. Can you explain to me a little bit about your grieving process? I read that you kind of use the phrase non-grieving to be part of your process. So tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about that.
One of the things that I tell people now when they lose someone is what I wish someone had said to me. And
Mhm,
that's, you don't have to be strong, not for your family, not for your parents, not for your job, not for your kids, not for anything. Feel what you need to feel. And I thought I had to just shut it down, not be emotional, go through. I have to go to work. I had to compartmentalize. I had to get all of these things done. What I realize now is that be strong is really for the benefit of others.
mhm,
So they don't have to see you grieving. But what happened for me is by shutting down all of the emotions, and I would eat it or drink it or shop it or whatever, watch SVU all night long.
mhm,
The only emotion that I felt for those 3 years was just anger, directed at everybody and everything, but mostly directed at myself.
mhm,
I blamed myself. I felt like I should have been able to protect him the way that I did when we were younger. And I know he didn't call me that night because I was supposed to fly out for a business trip the next day. 'Cause otherwise, I mean, we talked and texted a million times a day, like
mhm,
probably more than like I do with my own family now. And I also felt like somehow something got it wrong, that it should have been me and not him. And so I felt tremendous shame for being left. And so all that anger I put inward. And that was all I felt until the pandemic. And I found a therapist that would meet me on Zoom,
mhm,
and a prescriber as well. And the prescriber said, well, the first thing we need to do is maybe get your sleep under control. And I was like, my sleep is fine. I got to deal with all this other stuff. And she's, but you're not thinking about what that lack of sleep is doing to your body. If you are not sleeping when you start the day, your baseline, like anxiety, is up here. And what happens if one little thing goes wrong? Like I turn into the Incredible Hulk. Like that,
mhm.
that's what happens. And now sleep is a prior was one of those choices. Like, I'm sorry, like I will not make plans to go out late at night because I go to bed at 7:30. Everyone knows I'm in bed before my kids.
And sleep is one of the six pillars of a healthy brain. And when your brain is healthy, everything else can follow.
Yeah.
But the sleep is so necessary because people will say, well, I only need 3 or 4 hours sleep. Well, your body might only need 3 or 4 hours sleep, but your brain requires 7 hours sleep. And there's so many reasons behind it, but there's also a toxin that builds up in your brain that does not get out of your brain until towards the end of sleep, like around that seventh hour, sixth to seventh hour. And if you don't get rid of it, there's no other way for it to leave your body. And if it doesn't have the ability to get out, it stays there.
And in my career, I work in marketing communications. Like mentally, I need to be present and
Yeah.
sharp. Add in all the other stuff, life and all of that. I need my sleep. And now that I am active and I'm running, I need it even more because my body needs it as much as my brain.
Yeah. You need to rest and digest 100%. Absolutely. I love that you're being very open and honest. I love that your book is so open and honest. I love that you say whatever you think and how you're feeling because one part of your title of your book is Breaking Taboos. And one of the taboos is talking about these things, is talking about mental health, is talking about suicide, is talking about not getting enough sleep, beating yourself up, hating on yourself. I have felt those things myself. And that's one of the reasons I started doing what I do, is because I was in very, very dark places in my life. And suicidal ideation was right there all along with me. Even when I had young children, I used to tell my husband, you should leave, you should find somebody better for yourself, for the children. So I understand how you can turn it in on yourself. And that's one of the hardest things is that we tend to blame ourselves for anything that happens in the world, especially if you have somebody close to you that you feel something happened to them and you're angry about it, you hurt. We turn in on ourselves, and that is it can be incredibly destructive.
Hmm.
So finding yourself with these taboos, what did you feel needed to be called out in your grief and your suicide and your conversations with other people that society says don't talk about this?
Just going back to my cultural background, like I come from a culture where don't tell anybody anything.
Mhm.
Nobody needs to know your business. As far as anybody cares, things are perfect.
Mhm.
And I realized that by not talking about things is how we got to the place we were with my brother.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to change that so that other people knew that they weren't alone, that other people feel this way, that all of these things that we're all afraid to talk about, it's happening. Everyone experiences even a little bit of it at some point, right?
I say all the time, you never know what's going on behind closed doors. People can look at someone and say, oh, they've got the house, two cars, a fenced-in yard, dogs, cats, family. Oh, everything must be perfect.
Mhm.
And nobody's life, there is no such thing as perfection. And we all have things that we struggle with. Some more, um, deeply than others. Some may be physical, some may be mental, some may be financial, but we all have that. And so you're right, bringing it to the surface and having the conversations. That's what's important.
And I share not just my journey through grief, but also my personal experiences with my own mental health.
Mhm.
Because I struggle with anxiety, depression, OCD, like an eating disorder. These are things that, you put on that mask and you get really good at smiling through it, and no one really knows. And then until you share something and then someone reaches out and says, oh my God, what you wrote today really resonated with me. I have been struggling with this so bad and I thought I was alone. Thank you for sharing that. Do you mind if I share like my progress? And
Mm.
absolutely, please do. Or
Yeah.
someone will reach out and say, I'm worried about a loved one. Do you have time to talk? And I make that time because that's why I do this. I want people to know that it's okay to feel everything,
Mhm.
that it's okay to be messy, that it's brave to reach out and ask for help. And that's the piece that I think our society sometimes gets backwards, because the man up or be strong, but really the strongest thing that you can do is seek help
Mhm.
when you are in crisis, or get help for somebody when you're afraid, and you're afraid to ask the question, are you thinking of taking your life? That's the scariest question I've ever had to ask somebody,
Yeah.
that I did, because the answer was yes.
Yeah. And the phrase that you hear so many times is suck it up, buttercup.
Mhm.
And there are moments where you kind of have to do that. Okay, I committed to this job. I need to get this done. But it needs to be appropriate. I always say feel your feelings. I'm not one who glosses over and says, "Oh, everything's going to be okay. Just do it. You're fine. Everything's wonderful." No, you have to feel your feelings. My thought about that is don't live there. Don't stay there permanently,
Mhm.
but feel them and process them. That's part of being a healthy human. And to be able to have the conversations with other people that allows them the opportunity to open up and have that conversation. When I posted once about my depression, you see these things on Facebook that people say, share this. And so I shared it, but I put a little personal anecdote in it this time, saying about how I deal with depression. I have all my life, that just little pieces of information just to be really honest, because we see on social media, it's all about how wonderful we look, how everything's so great. Well, yeah, we have great moments, but let's be real also. And I
Mhm.
don't mean the kind of real where you put out a statement like, ugh, not again. And you're looking for attention, but real honest conversation. And so when I did do that, I had quite a few people reach out to me and say, wow, I didn't know. I would have thought you were just so happy-go-lucky. I was like, at that point, I was like, what? Where'd you get that impression? But I had a friend reach out to me and say, I had no idea. And I actually have a daughter who has depression also. And we actually were able to have a conversation, and I was able to give her answers to questions just about how do I talk about it? Do I not talk about it? I don't want to upset her, things like that. Those honest conversations can change somebody's life. So
Absolutely.
tell me a little bit about some conversations that you've had where someone said yes to that question that you asked them.
Well, the one example, and I share it a lot because it is a moment that really made me realize the importance of sharing and continuing to share. A friend of my daughter's showed up at my house one day. They were in college, and I thought it was odd. And it's one of her best friends, but I thought maybe she was there, maybe she was worried about Abby. I wasn't sure. And I was trying to guide the conversation. And she really wasn't, her thoughts didn't feel organized.
Hmm.
And I said, are you doing okay? And she just started to cry a little bit. And then something in me said, you need to ask her the question. And I said, are you thinking of taking your life? And her shoulders dropped and she exhaled as if she had been holding her breath for weeks. And she just cried. And I asked the next question that I ask, which is, do you have a plan? Because oftentimes people think about taking their life, but they don't have something planned. And she said, that's why I came here. She had gathered all of the medication in her parents' and her grandparents' home and had planned to take it and then said, I can go talk to Jen. I said, she's like, I think I can go home. I said, no, we're going to call your mom. So I got her set up in the other room, called her parents. And today, years later, she's thriving. She is a nurse and she's just an amazing young woman. But I think, what if I was too afraid to ask that question?
Hmm.
And it's not like you're not going to do something stupid, are you? Because that's going to draw someone into themselves. But are you thinking of taking your life? Are you thinking of killing yourself? And I wouldn't say you're not thinking of hurting yourself because that's different. A lot of us struggle with self-harm, and that's not the same thing as suicidal ideation.
Hmm.
So I am so grateful that she had the mental clarity to know that there was somebody she could talk to. And I'm glad that it was me, and I'm glad that she came here. And now I see her and I'm just amazed because she's flourished.
Yeah. And what I have noticed in my own life and in the life of somebody that I'm incredibly close to is that when you keep it inside, it grows. It becomes all you can think about. It becomes everything. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Just that release of answering that question,
Mhm.
just that release of talking to somebody can change your mindset. And then you can go from there. You can do what you need to from there. And that may mean somebody needs to hold your hand the whole way. That may mean therapy. It may mean hospitalization. There's so many things that it
So many
means.
things they can do. Yep.
But just opening that door, I have goosebumps all over my body because I've been there, because I know somebody that I desperately love that has been there, that fortunately we're both here because we've had avenues or somebody who asked a question. So thank you for being that person and for advocating. And tell me, what does advocating mean to you? What does it do for you besides, of course, helping somebody? What does it mean to you?
I read something somewhere and I forget whose quote it was, but it was, you know, when somebody's gone, you do things that bring you closer to them. That, you bring out you live their best qualities as a way to continue that relationship. And Teddy was a helper. And I honestly, like, I used to joke that I was a misanthrope and I would love to be like, a hermit in a forest in a cabin by myself, and I hated hugs, and I made my kids sit one cushion away from me on the couch, and now suddenly I give hugs freely, and it's not a coincidence. It's
Hmm.
because of my brother, because his heart, I feel like I'm carrying it with me. And so by doing that, I feel like I'm helping. I'm making sure that maybe somebody contacts 988
Hmm.
when they're in crisis or someone they love or is in crisis, or that somebody's sitting at home, like scrolling through the internet, going, everybody's life is perfect, like sees, no, not everybody's life is perfect. It's not. And a lot of what we see is what people want us to see. It's a curated feed.
Hmm.
And that's why I try to just be me. I don't have filters on my language or the topics or my coffee mugs, much to my mother's dismay. But it makes me, it helps me heal, and it helps me feel closer to my brother. At the most, that's my most selfish reason for
Hmm.
advocacy is I feel closer to my brother.
Hmm.
Um, but now that this has become my path, I can't imagine not doing this. Like, why would you not do something if it could help one person?
Yeah, and that's beautiful. That statement right there. That's why I do what I do. That's why I became a life coach, that I speak, that I have a podcast, that I wrote a chapter in a book, and I plan on writing more, is because we're message carriers. And we have this message, and we may have gone through heartbreak and grief and so many things. But the message that we have, we've learned through what we've gone through, and we can share it with others. And we want to help people. We have that heart to serve people. So, do you feel that you wanted to be that hermit in the woods in the cabin? Do you still feel that? Do you sometimes feel that? Or do you feel lit up by community?
I do like my alone time, and I need that because I can't always be social. I need that time to recharge my soul.
Mhm.
But I am lit up by community and lit up by connections. And in the last 4 years, I have met more people in the city that I live in than I had met the previous 25 years. And it makes me feel like I'm a part of something.
Yeah. And I think that's beautiful because I do feel that in this country, in our society, it's just a fact that in a lot of other countries, they have a different perspective on the village and the family, and they have a little bit more cohesiveness, I feel, and everybody kind of lives closer together. In our country, we seem to have a little bit more of an individualized society, and it's the individual and what we do in our lives. And I think that it's becoming more conscious now of that we need people, we need connection, we need family, we need friends. That's so important. Yes, we need our downtime. Yes, we need our alone time. We need to recharge. We need to be by ourselves occasionally. I feel that so deeply, and I've said it since I was pretty young, but I am so filled up and lit up by community. But I need the community to be people that are open and honest and will have real deep conversations. And that doesn't mean it has to be about your mental health necessarily, but real connection, real communication. I think that's so incredibly important. And I think that what you're doing by advocating for people and helping them be able to have these conversations can be a complete change in their lives. I
I hope.
think that you have to see yourself in that respect as a light for people. And I'm sure that for your daughter's friend, you were that light, and for many other people as well. So, how does it feel to know that you are that light for people?
Incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
There's this picture that I share a lot of my brother and I have it somewhere, but it's us, we're little, we're at the beach, and he's got these beautiful blonde ringlets, and he just looks like a little angel. And I'm standing next to him, my hair is a mess, and I've got this scowl on my face, and it is like the most Jennifer and Teddy picture, like that ever existed.
Hmm.
And I showed it to my therapist once and I was like, see, this is the proof. She goes, the proof of what? I said, the proof that he should be here and not me. Like that he was the good one. Like he was the light and I was the dark, and he was the good and I was the bad. Like he was always the good son and I was the pain in the you know what daughter. So it makes me uncomfortable to think that I'm a light in anybody's life, because in my head, this whole thing is wrong. Like he should be here. And my therapist said, well, yes, he should be here, but there's no reason that you both shouldn't be here.
Hmm.
And she said, when I see this picture, I see a sister with an arm protectively around her little brother, and I see him laughing. And this picture makes me smile. And I said, I don't know if I can ever look at this picture the same way again. And when I start to have those, if I see the photo and I start to have those thoughts, I remember her saying, this is what I see. And I think, oh. But yeah, it makes me, I feel uncomfortable because I don't feel, not that I don't feel good. And no, I guess it is. I don't feel good enough mostly.
Okay.
Um, and I'm still
Now
trying.
you're referring to the picture in your book, towards the front of your book, correct?
Yeah,
I
pick
think,
towards the front of the book. Yeah.
yeah. And I see a fiercely loving, loyal big sister. So, yeah, it's definitely perspective. Life isn't just here's this moment, you've achieved it, that's it. Then this moment, you've achieved it, that's it. It's the entire journey. And throughout this journey, you start to discover who you are, what you feel, you can grow, you can change. I want to tell you that I see you as a light and I see you as very real, very grounded, and very open and honest, and somebody that people could easily talk to about this, which I think is a beautiful, beautiful thing. So I hope you can take that in
I'm
and
trying. I'm
start to
trying.
find your light.
I'm trying to change the subject.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So tell me something for people who are listening who might be walking through this hard season of grief, even if it's years ago, because some people get stuck.
Well, and
Um,
it's grief isn't ever over,
right. And
right?
I can
Like,
tell you,
and
I know that for sure.
I think people sometimes think, oh, there's like this window of time where you're actively grieving, and then you're not anymore. Like it's been almost 9 years. And some days I see something, I go, oh, I have to text Teddy. And then it hits you. And you're like,
Mm,
I can't text him. And then some days it feels like so long ago that I forget what his voice sounds like. And I have the last voicemail that he had left me. And I listened to it just so I could remember his voice. It's never concluded. It's not linear. Like those stages of grief, they were never meant to be processed linearly, because most of us experience them out of order all at once. Like I think I called it like a heavy pour cocktail,
mm,
and you're not sure how it's going to hit you or when it's going to hit you, but it's going to hit you. And it doesn't ever leave, but you learn to carry it differently. It becomes part of the fabric of who you are,
mhm.
but it doesn't have to define who you are.
Right.
And there
And
are moments that are heavier.
mm,
For me, it's his birthday, his anniversary, but even my birthday.
mhm.
I love to celebrate my birthday, but it's also a reminder that that age gap between us is growing,
Yeah,
and we're not 18 months apart anymore.
right.
And that makes me sad. So I think people who are in it need to know that it will get better, and then
Mhm,
it will get worse, and then it will get beautiful, and then it might get bad again, but
mhm.
that's all normal, and it's part of the love that you had for that person.
Yeah. And I've had that experience with my mom, who actually, this was our 10th Christmas without her. She passed 9 years ago in October. And it's a different kind of, it's more expected that a mom will pass before the child. You've lost your sibling who was actually younger than you. But like you said, you're going to have moments where it hits you out of nowhere, even 9 years later. And there are times that I'll hear a song that was one of her favorites, and I just start smiling and I start singing. But there are other moments where I hear it and out of nowhere I start crying. And
Mhm.
it's all part of it, and it's all okay because you did have that experience with that person. You did have that love, you did have that connection. It is hard to let go of it. So when you have your moments where you feel like, oh, that was him playing a joke on me, or a song that reminds you of him and it makes you laugh. How does that feel in the moment?
It feels amazing.
Mm.
It feels amazing. If you follow me online, you know that feather blue jays remind me of my brother. And there was one point this year where I was finding so many blue jays. A friend of mine was like, "Are the birds in your neighborhood naked?" And I felt like and it was around the time that the book was published, and I felt like it was my brother saying, like, "I see you, thank you. I save a lot of the feathers." It makes me feel really happy.
Mm. I love that. I love that. What would you say to someone who fears that moving forward means leaving that person that they lost behind?
Well, you never really move. Well, like people will say, you need to move on, you need
Mm.
to move forward, and you never do because your heart is always with that person. And as
Mhm.
long as you carry them in your heart, they're with you.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. Your book is filled with humor, heartbreak, and radical honesty. So, looking back, how do you feel about the person that you've become as a result of the journey that you had?
I feel really good about that part because for many, many, many years, I tried to fit into the box that everyone else in my life wanted. I was a
Mm.
people pleaser through and through, and I was the only person not being pleased at all.
Yeah.
Like even as far as I used to straighten my hair because when I was little, someone said, "Oh, curly hair is going to make you're not going to look like the Americans," even though we were Americans, but
Mm.
so I always straightened my hair and then I stopped straightening it and I was like, "Oh, I like this. I can just be me." Or someone once said, "You should only wear turtlenecks because you're bigger up top and it just looks trashy."
Mm.
I don't even like turtlenecks. I don't like them. And that's all I wore. And
Mm.
no, just little things like and it at first it felt like I was being defiant or rebellious,
Mhm.
but I was really just listening to what I wanted. And in some ways that felt wrong because for
Mhm.
most of my life I did what other people wanted. And so having that freedom to think for myself and make my own decisions, that made me feel really strong in a way that I had never felt. And it also, a lot of those resentments that I carried around because I was always doing what other people wanted, those resentments are no longer part of the equation.
Mhm.
So that just leaves more room for me to experience life the way I'm supposed to experience it,
Right.
not the way someone else wants me to experience it.
Yes. And that's a huge part of why I do what I do, because I want people to see that they are often living on the belief systems that they get in their brain by the age of 7. Our
Mhm.
brain isn't fully formed until we're what, 25? They're even saying 26 now. And that means you're running on other people's beliefs. That leads to a lot of people pleasing. It leads to wearing the turtleneck when you hate the turtleneck. Your A turtleneck to me is constriction. I don't feel free. I feel too hot. That's what we're doing to ourselves by
Mhm.
letting the world and society dictate to us. So I love that you're rule breaking in that respect and you're breaking the taboos. You're talking, you're doing what is right for you. And I think a lot of us can feel it in our bodies, what is right for us, but we will shove it down because it's not going to be what everybody else expects or wants. My hair, you can't see it right now, but it's usually hot pink here and a couple other places like fuchsia. And I do it because it makes me feel good. I don't care if somebody else thinks it's weird. I don't care if somebody else loves it. I love it because it's my expression of myself. So I love that you're doing that for you now. And it's really hard to do when you live your life shoving it down for so long and other people tell you this is who you're supposed to be. This is what you're supposed to do. This is what society expects of you. I'm sorry that you lost Teddy, but I'm very happy that you're able to take it and learn something from it and help others learn from it and grow from it. What do you hope that readers feel after reading your book, understanding your story, and what internal shift you might hope for them?
I hope that someone who reads it feels seen,
Mm,
heard, valued, understood, and sees that even though you've experienced a life rearranging loss, whether it be a loss of a person, a job, a friend, whatever, even in those moments of life rearranging loss, we can still build a beautiful life and that joy and grief coexist.
mm. Yes, they definitely coexist. And to not live in the grief only, but to find the beauty in life and still hold space for the grief, for the
Mhm.
person that you lost, for the situation that you lost. Because grief can be losing a person, but it can be so much more. And a lot of people don't think of that as, other things as grief. We feel grief for so many reasons.
Mhm.
But of course, the finality of losing somebody brings that on. And to be able to hold space for those people alongside the joy in life as well, it doesn't feel like it's supposed to coexist, but you're right. It definitely can. It definitely can. What point in this journey do you feel like you finally started to feel like there was hope for you to live your life holding both?
I will say that marathon in a month was one of the first times I felt hope,
Hmm.
especially on my brother's anniversary. And I intentionally went to our hometown and walked in our hometown and walked by our childhood house and our grammar school and the park and our high school. And I intentionally walked in these places so I could remember the times that we had. It didn't feel heavy,
Hmm.
even though I started at his gravesite. And at the end of the day, I think I felt hope for the first time in those years.
Yeah.
It had been
And,
4 years.
and how are your conversations with your family now in terms of looking at Teddy's life and having these conversations about suicide and feelings?
We talk about Teddy all the time because a lot of things that, my kids will do things that remind me
Mm.
of him. Like we used to say, like Teddy could have been in the CIA,
Hmm.
because he gave in like very little information. And my oldest son is like the same way,
Mm.
or my youngest can be a clown, just like Teddy. And Abby has like his gentle heart. And
Hmm.
I see that a lot. Or we'll be doing something and be like, oh my God, remember when Uncle Teddy did X, Y, and Z? It's easy to remember him. But I think the biggest shift, especially in my family, not just my immediate family, but like with my parents, were a lot more open in communication about our feelings. I remember my oldest went to Italy for Thanksgiving with some friends a few years ago. And he texted me from the airport from Logan and was like, oh, I already left my suitcase at a restaurant. Ha ha ha. And I called my best friend and I was like, he's not even in another country yet. And we're already having mishaps. And she said, but no, but think about it. Would you have called your mother and told her that?
Mm.
No, not even a bit. So I'm glad that they feel like they can come to me because I don't want them to ever feel like they can't come to me with anything or everything. And I hope that this experience has helped them too in some ways.
Hmm.
Although, I'll forever feel sadness for them for those first few years when I wasn't processing grief because I know I was not the mom that they needed. And that I feel sad about that. And I feel like I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for that in some way because it wasn't fair to them.
But I think at the same time, of course, we all have regrets in our lives. But at the same time, I think that just being open with them and having those conversations, that alone changes their lives in a very positive way because they can have those conversations and communicate with people and learn to not only open up and express their feelings, but be there for others
Hmm.
because you're modeling that. So that's beautiful. I want to have you tell us how people can reach out to you, and we will have this information in the show notes. But why don't you go ahead and let people know about your book, where they can get it, and how
Sure.
to reach you?
So one of my grandma Jenny's favorite things to say, and this is from her childhood growing up, where her job growing up in the 20s was to go on the street and collect horse manure for her parents' garden. She would see me here, there, and everywhere and say, you know what? You're like horse crap. You're everywhere. And I literally am everywhere. So I'm on Instagram, jen.and.pen. It's pen as in right, but it's meant for pen as in my dog Penelope.
Mhm.
On Facebook as Jen Hoye. On LinkedIn, I have a website, jenniferhoye.com. You can get in touch with me through there. My book is available at a lot of local bookshops, as well as a number of Barnes and Nobles in the Northeast, and online at Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
Awesome. So I will definitely be putting that in the show notes. So anybody who wants to reach out and get in touch with Jen to have a conversation or even ask Jen to speak at their events
Thank
because
you.
Jen does a lot of speaking. And my final question for you, Jen, is what does living a life beyond BS mean to you?
Oh, it's just living how I am. I don't do filters.
Mhm.
That's what you see is what you get, and I will never change.
Love it. Be open, be honest, be who you are. I love that. I just want people to know that as a coach, I work with people on their mindset and a lot of the things that we talked about today. So I do have a program starting in January called Happy, Healthy, Whole. If you're interested, that will be in the show notes. And I want to say thank you so much for sharing this space with us today. My hope is that you walk away knowing that you have the power to choose differently. Go live fully, freely, and unapologetically. Your life beyond BS starts now. I'm so grateful you were here today. Remember, your peace, joy, and happiness aren't found in the BS. They're found in your choices. If this episode spoke to you, please rate, review, follow, and subscribe, and share it with a friend. For ways to connect or work with me, check the show notes or visit heathermcnally.com. Until next time, keep choosing you and keep living your life beyond BS.